Hello everyone, I am Catherine Kettrick and pleased to introduce Kathy Madden, who will describe for us the formal consensus process and how we use it. Kathy?
Thanks, Catherine. As Catherine mentioned, making decisions using consensus and making decisions using voting are very different. And the most important difference is that consensus is not about agreement. We don't all have to agree to consent to a proposal. Here's a real-world example of how a group can consent to a proposal without agreeing. Imagine we're a group of 12 people. We could be colleagues, friends, family, or fellow ATI members. Someone proposes that we go out to dinner. And generally, because everyone shares the value of being together and having a good time, there's boisterous interest. Someone asks where we're going. And the suggestion is a local steakhouse. Very popular restaurant. As the group considers the proposed restaurant, several people express some concerns about the choice. And we find out that the group includes a vegetarian, a paleo diet person, a gluten-free person, a raw diet person, and a diabetic. In one scenario, the group might vote, and perhaps 10 people vote to go to the steakhouse, and 2 people don't. Because the group voted on it, they decide to go, but that leaves the vegetarian and the raw diet person out of the loop entirely. They might be able to have a side salad. Imagine how you would feel if you were one of those 2 people. That you just have to deal with their choice. Another scenario. The group considers all the concerns and finds that there's another really good restaurant that meets all the dietary concerns. The group goes there. And in truth, some people might still prefer the steakhouse. But because their value was in being together and having a good time, they consented to go to the restaurant that served everyone. Although they didn't agree with the restaurant choice, they consented because that choice served the values of the larger group value. The idea that consensus, formal consensus, is about consent rather than agreement is very, very important. I'm going to quote a little bit from the book on conflict and consensus. The fundamental difference between consensus and voting is one of cooperation versus competition. Cooperation versus competition. This affects the structure of the process as well as the attitude of the participants. Consensus fosters an environment in which everyone is respected and all contributions are valued. Creative resolution of all concerns contributes to the overall quality of the decision. Voting encourages competition, often without regard to others' concerns. Since its goal is the winning of most votes, majority rule risks alienation and apathy within the group. Consensus requires a different attitude towards conflict and its resolution. Conflict is considered necessary, welcomed, and desirable, not something to be avoided, repressed, or feared. With formal consensus, the group strives to create an environment in which disagreement can be expressed without fear and heard as a concern, which, when resolved, will make the decision stronger and the best it can be for the group. That has absolutely been my experience with ATI, that once we move through the process, the proposals are better and best for the whole group. Now we're going to go through the formal consensus flow chart and look at each part. The formal consensus flow chart shows the process a group uses to take a proposal from idea to the final decision. And like all decision-making systems, the first step is presenting the proposal and answering any clarifying questions. In the restaurant example, the proposal was to go out to dinner. The clarifying question was where? The answer was a popular steakhouse. Obviously, in a more complex proposal, there might be more questions, but the idea is essentially the same. Everyone needs to understand what we're doing. After everyone understands the proposal now belongs to the group. The work of the presenter, as an individual or as a representative of the committee or the board, is done. They've given the proposal to the group, and now they sit down and participate in the discussion just as any other member would do. When the group understands the proposal and is ready to discuss it, formal consensus uses 3 levels of discussion. Level 1 is about values. Level 2 involves collecting concerns about the proposal. And level 3 is when we work to resolve those concerns. Level 1 is a discussion of values and how the proposal supports the values of the group. In ATI, we always begin our level 1 discussions with reviewing and reading together our vision and mission, so that everyone is reminded of what our values, our goals are as a group. As far as we know, no other decision-making process includes this. Discussing values helps people understand how doing a proposal would support the goals and vision of the group. It helps us become more of a group because we collectively experience how a proposal could benefit the group. In the restaurant example, the group had to consider the values of being together and having a good time. The second level of discussion is level 2, expressing and gathering concerns. Here again is a way that formal consensus is different from other ways of making decisions. Most of the time in other kinds of meetings, when people offer concerns, someone starts trying to resolve them right away, and we end up in kind of a round and round circle of one person trying to resolve a current concern, someone having a concern about that. With formal consensus, we simply list the concerns. A public scribe will record the concerns either on a large pad of paper at the front of the room or on a Google Doc that everyone can see. In the restaurant example, the group found out that several people had dietary concerns with going to the steakhouse. It's really important to understand that all concerns are welcome. If you are unsure of how to say your concern, the facilitator or a formal consensus advocate can help you. Another important difference from other decision-making processes is that all concerns are shared by the group. This means that if you have a concern and somebody else says it before you do, you don't have to say it again. We don't need to know how many people have a concern. It doesn't matter, because we're going to work to resolve all the concerns, whether one person has it or 10 people have it. Gathering concerns in this way is efficient, saves a lot of time, and again, really helps us understand ourselves as a group. One last thing about level 2. The last step of the process is to group related concerns. Usually there are several concerns, and often they fall into groups. For instance, they might be about money. Do we have the funds to support it? It might be about staff. Do we have enough people to do this? Or how a proposed change will work. We group these concerns before we move on to the next and final level of discussion, level 3. Level 3 is when we work together to resolve the concerns. At all times during level 3, if someone has a clarifying question about a concern, they ask. We want everyone to understand the concerns just as we did the proposal. You'll notice that we first start working to resolve the groups of concerns. Resolve group concerns. Sometimes when we do that, we find ourselves resolving all the concerns, but often there are a few single concerns remaining. We restate the single concerns and make sure everyone understands them. Then we discuss how to resolve each concern. If the concerns are resolved, we have consensus. The facilitator will check with the group by saying, "Are there any unresolved concerns?" And wait. The facilitator will wait longer in a more complicated discussion. If there are no concerns, the facilitator will say, "Hearing no concerns, we have consensus." Yes, and everyone cheers. Now, it's important to note that the language of the facilitator is not, "Does anyone have any unresolved concerns?" That would put it back on the individual. An individual may feel that they still have a concern about something but not feel comfortable saying so. However, asking, "Are there any unresolved concerns?" is asking the group. It's saying, did we forget anything? Some people do still have concerns. And then we use a different closing option. The first closing option is send to committee. Sometimes there are just too many concerns with the proposal, and the best thing to do is to ask the committee to do more work on it. This happens fairly often, and when the proposal comes back, it's always better. The next option is standing aside, and is often used. If a person has a concern, the facilitator will ask if they're willing to stand aside. Standing aside means you consent to the proposal and let it happen. You literally stand aside. If people with concerns stand aside, the facilitator will ask again, "Are there any unresolved concerns?" And wait. If no one speaks, then the facilitator will say, "Hearing no concerns, we have consensus." And again, we celebrate. It's important to note that informal consensus, unlike other voting systems, the concerns are included in the final proposal. The proposal will read, the following proposal was consented to with 1 or 2 or 3 unresolved concerns. Then we write the text of the proposal with the unresolved concerns at the bottom. When we have unresolved concerns, these concerns can be brought back later for more discussion. We've done this once in ATI. 2 people who had unresolved concerns brought a proposal to the membership and that they rewrote in a way that resolved their concerns. The membership discussed it and consented to it. The last option is to declare a block. In formal consensus, unlike in other systems, under consensus-based systems, an individual cannot block a proposal. Only the group can block a proposal. And only if they recognize that the proposal is in some way contrary to the group's values, vision, and mission. If someone has a concern and they can't stand aside, the facilitator will lead the group through another level 1 discussion where we once again talk about our values, vision, and mission and see how the proposal is in accord with them or not. Doing another level 1 discussion requires skillful facilitation. So far, we have never needed this option in ATI. Finally, at the end of the meeting, we have a meeting evaluation. We do an evaluation to find out what went well and what could go better. What could we improve? It's also a time to reflect on our feeling response to the meeting. For example, someone might say about the facilitator, Mary, I really appreciated how you guided us through resolving concerns. I felt my concerns were heard. Or, I got lost in the level 3 discussion. I wasn't sure where we were all the time. If we hear that a person is lost, then that gives us feedback on how to improve the process itself. Sometimes people might say it would help me if, for example, if we could see the agenda during the whole meeting so we can know where we are. When someone makes that kind of suggestion, we do it. Just as with level 2, when we listed concerns but didn't discuss them, we don't discuss evaluation comments. We may approach someone after the meeting and ask for clarification. Can you tell us a little bit more about when you were lost? Maybe they can. Maybe they can't. Maybe they don't want to. We still need to look at the process and improve it. That, in brief, is the formal consensus process. ATI has gotten much better at using it since 1994. We hope that this tour will help you understand it and be able to use it also.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you for watching. The next slide is resources for formal consensus. And we hope you watch our other video, The Roles of Formal Consensus. Thank you.